Good morning, welcome back to Mountain View Homestead. This is Andy, and today we've got a task cut out for us. We finally, after over a week of having rained straight through, this is basically a mud pit. It's too wet for me to get the tiller in, but I've got to get some stuff weeded so that we can be ready to plant some more here in the next couple days. So we're going to compare two different hoes to be able to get our weeding done. One that's going to be a traditional hoe, one that's going to be the stirrup hoe, and we're going to see which one does better. Come along. Homestead, this is Andy coming to you.
On a rainy day, the sunflowers have started to come to life.
So the first one that we're going to try is going to be this stirrup hoe, and there's different versions of this that are out there. One's more of a push-pull hoe. This one is stationary, so it doesn't go back and forth. Just helps you kind of get under that, especially with this dirt being wet. It's going to help me be able to get under that. And then I'll take a rake to come through and be able to gather everything up. Really, I think the only fair comparison here is if we go through and if we time 10 minutes with each one, see how far we can go. Compare this versus traditional hoe versus just picking it by hand. Let's see which one wins. Okay, so the stirrup hoe, it took us 12 minutes to get all of that done. We have not raked up any of the weeds that we got out, but made quick work of it, especially with the ground being wet. The next row that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go through and use the traditional hoe with it and just compare that. We got stuff planted a little bit more in this next row. We've got our radish. We've got beets that are down a little bit further. So I'm gonna have to watch. It's probably gonna take longer, but it'll give us a good comparison just to see how it works compared to the stirrup hoe. All right, so based upon that comparison, doing 10 minutes of each row, if you can see, we're about 15 feet shorter. Now there was a lot more to work in between here. However, they're spaced out much more. So if you look at the neighboring row with the kohlrabi, the bok choy, there was a lot more of that to work around than what we've been doing in the radish and the beets. So I would say the traditional hoe, fantastic, but not nearly as good as a stirrup hoe. So if you can get your hands on one, I would recommend it just for ease of being able to go through the garden, especially for me. I'm in Virginia. There's a lot more clay. It's a lot more dense with this garden. If you have a raised bed, it's not gonna matter, whatever you're comfortable with. But with a traditional garden like this, the regular hoe, I think, is the loser. Stirrup hoe, clear winner. I'm gonna go through and have to pick by hand for the onions. I know that's not gonna be a comparison. Biggest difference is gonna be this. With going through and pulling just using your hands, I'm gonna be putting everything directly in a bucket versus this where I've went through and I've hoed and it's basically been turned under with the dirt, and I'm gonna have to go through and rake, put that, shake it out, put it in a bucket, so I still have that step. If you compare that, it might be hand in hand, but it's a little bit different than having to bend over and get back up constantly over and over and over again with doing it by hand. So guys, I think that kind of ends the competition. We're going to finish this up and hopefully we'll get everything done in short order. Guys, that's going to finish everything up as far as the competition for this episode. However, we still have a lot more to weed. So I'm going to finish that up. And then later today after church, hopefully, if we have time and it's not raining, we've got a lot. I would love to be able to till and get more in the ground. It looks like the weather report says it's going to be dry the next 2 days. So I'm going to let that happen. I'm going to let it dry out a little bit more. Hopefully Tuesday, I can run through here with the tiller in between the rows. And then we can go ahead in these upper rows that still need to be planted with tomatoes, peppers, okra, that we'll get those out and have everything in the ground ready and growing for the summer. So through here, I know that we planted beets, but you can't really say anything or tell. So I'm going to go through with my bucket and hand pick the rest of this row, just because I don't want to accidentally go through. And I know I did some new ones in this section through here. I don't know if any of them came up, and they might have got choked out just because of the weeds, but I'll go through with the bucket and pick up. Oh, grab that guy. We didn't want to pull that radish. I'm just going to stick him back. Well, he's not going to go back in. Radish really haven't grown well this year. It's really small. Not what I want to see. Now I'm just going through and trying to individually look at what I'm pulling, so that I can try to prevent from pulling the wrong thing. It's going to work great. Yeah, this is going to take a long time, but I don't want to lose if I've got good growth, and I know through here it would be too early, more than likely, to pull anything to be able to eat. I haven't seen anything yet, so we may not have had anything come up just because of either the weed pressure or because they were old seeds. And sometimes you're going to have that. Sometimes we kept seeds longer than we probably should have, but I feel bad throwing any seeds away. I try, and the worst that happens is I have to come back and I have to sow stuff again. But something like a beet, I like them on a salad. I pickle them. I'm not going to lose that much. It's not a crop that we're counting on for the to put back. So you can see here, this is the biggest difference with doing it by hand. This small area, I've got all of this that I've already picked, and it's not going to stay in the garden. It's going to go out. I'm going to throw it over into the weeds, where hopefully it will stay. Just trying to finish up some of the weeding of the tomatoes from the other day. We tried to get out here and do this, but the weather did not cooperate with us. Now these tomatoes we planted, they were probably too small, especially considering the day that we put them out. It wound up dropping cold that night. So I don't know how these are going to do, but we're going to monitor them. We've got others as backups since we grew so many. And if we need to, we're going to go back through, and any of these that don't make it, we will transplant with replacements. So I'm not overly worried about it. It'll be a little bit further behind for the season on tomatoes, but I'm not in a competition to try to have tomatoes by July 4th. I just want to have them when they're ready. If you want to comment down below, what's your favorite tomato to eat? Last year was the first year that we grew Cherokee Purple, and I really liked those. However, I guess prior to that, it was just a normal like beefsteak or something that I was having. This year, I've got some different ones. I know a lot of people like Mr. Stripey. I mean, if you just like Romas, put Roma. If you like something different, maybe that's something I've not heard of, go ahead and put that in the comments as well. But we've got to get these weeds pulled because it will choke out. It'll compete and take away from those little baby tomato plants. And those things are so small as it is, they got a lot going against them. Now look right here. I was weeding. Look what we found. Hey there, buddy. This is not your home. You need to get out. You are evicted. Want to say hi to everybody? Hello. Hello. Yeah, you can go somewhere else. Go somewhere else. Thank you. And put him right there. I don't know what he's going to do, but if he's eating on stuff, then I'll get rid of him. But for right now, I'll let him hang out. We had frogs. We got turtles. A bit of everything. I'm gonna leave the camera on and just see what he does while I'm doing this. I don't know. My girls we lived in Lynchburg for a time, There was a place called Sequest, and my girls loved being able to feed the turtle when we were there. I don't plan on keeping that one. We're not going to get a terrarium, but he can live out here. He can eat up some bugs. As long as he doesn't munch on my plants, we'll be friends. Munch on my plants, you go away. Now I'll go back through and get the rest of these weeds later, but mainly I'm just trying to remove the pressure from anything being around and competing with the tomatoes that we set out. Because you can see, we planted them deep just to try to get them to establish roots and then grow. But they were probably too small looking back. That's all right. I should have transplanted, and instead we put them in the ground. You learn a little bit each year that you do this. That's the thing that I've found is that each year that you do it, you learn a little bit more. Something that you can use for the next year. What's our turtle friend doing? Now he's got his head out. All right, Mr. Turtle, we're gonna let you hang out. We got more to finish. All right, so we got some of the garden weeded. There's obviously still a lot of weeds, but like I said, I'm gonna come through with the tiller. I'm gonna get between these rows. I just know that in between the stuff that's growing right now, the tomatoes that we planted before all this rain came through, they needed some relief. We'll see how much of that survives because it is pretty stunted with the growth. We transplanted them a little bit early, but our broccoli, our kohlrabi, our bok choy, you know, that's going to make a big difference for it. I weeded the cucumbers in the rain the other day. I didn't bring the camera because obviously I didn't want to ruin it. And I still have the onions, the potatoes, and around the sunflowers and regular flowers that my wife planted to be able to come through and weed those. This row here in between, that's all going to be tilled because that's going to be extra space for us to go with beans. So beans will be all through here. We've got corn that's planted. I'm not seeing a whole lot of corn come up. So I'm gonna watch that here over the next couple days. If I don't see any that are coming up, then I'm gonna go ahead and re-sow some. And then we will we'll have everything in the ground. So the tomatoes, the peppers, the okra, corn, beans. We're gonna get all of that out here over the next week. Rain or shine, we've got to be able to get stuff in the ground. I've got to get this tilled while we have a break in the rain. That's part of it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe so you never miss an episode. And like I always say, love your life, love your homestead. See you guys.